So, something really dangerous and terrifying just happened. There's this notice right here on the internet, and it says the Central Bank of Russian Federation set the discount price for precious metals on July 15th. We're not talking about the commodities exchange. We're not talking about something having to do, for instance, about how precious metals might factor into some sort of strategic national security strategy. It's the Central Bank of the Russian Federation. And I have been very concerned and expressing with a great alacrity that for the last several weeks there has been horrendously terrible processes at work, including what has been revealed to be a bond flip involving bonds from the Reconstruction after the American Civil War that I contend actually provided a means by which to bond people into slavery that got flipped and provided reference material to primary source documentation concerning the history of the American banking system, including its gold and silver coinage laws in relationship to bonds issued by the Treasury and the manners in which those bonds were connected to certificates for gold and silver coinage that also factored into currency, and the time frames that align with not only the Holocaust in Germany, but series of pogroms that happened in Russia, specifically during time frames connected to legislative changes in the United States around gold and silver coinage laws. And that inherent in there is this incredibly horrendously anti-Semitic conversion scheme. And this is what we've been dealing with since May in a very comprehensive manner. Nobody seems to have been very concerned. Today there is a reissue of 7 different major securities with the Department of Treasury, most of which had already been issued, one of which has gone through the 3rd reissue today, that demonstrably shows you how you convert the Jew in order to turn the gold coinage into silver coinage. And according to this right here, it says that July 15th, which is today, but a few hours earlier, here it would be July 15th in Russia. They got the gold rate in rubles per gram, the silver rate in rubles per gram, the platinum rate in rubles per gram, and the palladium rate in rubles per gram. Now, this is in a third-party provider of information. I'm not going to go to the actual website of the Central Bank of the Russian Federation because I understand that it's very explicit for visitation to that specific website, that you're expressing some kind of an interest, and I don't want there to be any miscommunication. I am not interested in any sort of condoning of this disgusting, horrendous, criminal, horrific, illegal coinage scam. Why is a woman who has been completely kidnapped, isolated, and exploited in the United States for years being directly pegged and pinged for announcements of discount precious metals in conjunction with a time frame that has been for over a year demonstrably evident connected to blue chip stock issues, to joint stock issues, and at least 2 major mintages through the Central Bank of the Russian Federation that are directly connected to very specific strategic announcements of people's campaign activities or announcements of political priorities in the United States, and massive documentation of horrible crimes through the Department of Treasury that is also, by the way, concurrent to policy at the Federal Reserve, including 2 public comment periods that came due on July 12th of this year concerning automatic clearinghouses and fees associated with debit cards. Is not today supposed to be the day where they began the payment for the child tax credit in the United States? You got to understand, this is not a coincidence. Did somebody already obligate the futures of children whose parents are going to get some sort of bullshit nominal tax credit to a Russian coinage scheme? Is this the kind of thing nobody's talked about or expressed alarm in regards to? Because for how many years or decades the United States was involved in doing that to children in other countries? Oh, wait a second. You mean children in our country too, right? Including children that might have some sort of familial lineage in connection with people from those countries? Is this just something that's supposed to be understood at a certain level? That when you get to that level, you just understand that we swap out coining each other's children all the time. And, if you really want to be taken seriously, you're not supposed to call it prostitution. You're supposed to realize that you got to offer us some kids of your own to coin, or you don't really have anything to offer. And you didn't want to have children, and there was a reason for that. And, you've been a teacher, and you were supposed to just go ahead and support us in already having established a policy of coining the children you used to teach, and you just keep refusing. And this is kind of like what's on one level, right? On the background. On the other level, there is a recurrent voice, a recurrent appearance of someone saying, does anybody really remember what happened during the Holocaust? Why are we not talking about this? Why do you not want to talk about the stock issue that happened within the last 4 days that was specifically coded to the German invasion of first Zitomir and then Kiev? That you specifically issued a very specific issue of stock that was a recapitulation of Nazi stock that had been brokered and compiled based upon arrests of people from the Capitol riots that was somehow supposed to be some kind of recirculation. And if you watch what's happened in Belarus and in that area in the last 3 days, you see what's happened. You can see what has happened with the Nazi stock issue that's being laundered within the United States in connection with, I believe, accounts of people that are actually Belarusian or from Belarus that have been derivative hacked through OFAC. For what purpose? What purpose is this serving? What is supposed to be the higher end? Are we supposed to allow ourselves to have a completely fraudulent, irresponsible mimicry of appropriate governance through the legislature that has said nothing about what Treasury's done and has been completely absent in the crimes that have been committed through the Federal Reserve? Are we supposed to let them obligate us to trillions of dollars a year based on coining children in the United States as derivatives of precious metals that are going to be coined in Russia in order for their parents to get some $300 a month payoff to rent out their kid? I mean, this has been what they've been setting up for years. I'm not ever going to adjust my attitude to placate your absolute refusal to address this for what it is. We cannot allow for this to happen. There's no plausible deniability. It's one of those things that they warn you about. It's like that effort to try to extort you ex post facto into agreement to something that may not have been disclosed to you ahead of time. Yes, we coined children. We may even have coined you. We coined foreign children. Some of those children were coined and sexually exploited, including electronically. Children in other countries were strategically murdered in order to create and maintain a specific mintage. You benefited from it. Now we're coining your children, and if you take the payoff for us coining your children, that means you pretty much agreed to and cooperated with, and were willingly playing at being ignorant while we coined all of those children in other parts of the world. You know that whole, I'm going to throw my child in front of you and swap it out with somebody else's kids for racial justice? Please understand, this precious metal coinage is pegged to an alarm concerning weapons of mass destruction. You didn't want to talk about biological weapons for what they really were. You didn't want to talk about what nuclear weapons really were. You didn't want to talk about what this whole chemical weapons disposal requirement was. What was the biological weapons disposal requirement that allowed for the countries of the former Soviet Union to be sanctioned and humiliated and attempted for extortion into some of the most heinous acts, again, in the history of that part of the world, while people in this country played all of these farcical games around racial justice without actually speaking about what was underwriting all of the completely fraudulent antics that have been ongoing. What do you expect? They've just used me for the last week as if nothing else, an accomplice witness to this coinage in Russia. What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to say? Every single other person in the world that let this be maintained as status quo, everybody in this country that exercised some plausible deniability or just decided they were going to tune me out, even when I showed up in person and said, I need to talk to you about this. Every single one of you now. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when Russia needs to open up some liquidity? It's a very, very serious question. You guys have stood by. They just arrested kids, and they just arrested young people, students in the West Bank. What do you think that's for? Are those students that were arrested at Berzit, are they gold? Are they silver? Are they platinum? Are they palladium? What precious metal did Bennett and his henchmen value those students alleged to be involved in subversive activities at? Who is the certificate holder on your precious metal conversion? Don't make any jokes here. Don't make any pretenses. You let them open an embassy. You let the United Arab Emirates open an embassy within the last 72 hours. Not in Jerusalem, by the way. This is 100% blatant. You know exactly what you're doing. What are we supposed to do now? You wanted to play like I was your Ukrainian fucking hooker, and so it was okay to just throw me off to the side until I met the whole pension scheme that you set up based on characterizing me. Apparently, I'm not a fucking Ukrainian, and then a teenage Ukrainian hooker any more than I was an Arabian prostitute, right? What are you going to do now? You didn't want to talk about it when it was slavery. You didn't want to talk about it when it was illegal coinage. You didn't want to talk about it when it was electronic child sexual exploitation. You didn't want to talk about it when it was about acts of terrorism connected to biological weapons associated with trafficking children under the auspices that they had a medical condition because they were being used in research and development for weapons development. You didn't want to talk about any of that. Are you going to go tell everybody what a great rate you got on your fucking Russian gold coins? Are you going to go tell everybody about all the great shit you're going to buy with that $300 per child the government's going to give you as a kickback to keep your fucking mouth shut while they rape your child to death? You know what? Every word I say is actually a currency that has a particular value. It could have been very lucrative. It could have been very supportive, and it could have been very productive. I have absolutely no desire to participate in any way, shape, or form with anything that somebody's going to try to mischaracterize as fucking infrastructure in this country. It is a crime. It's not even what the Nazis did. They at least had some sort of political mobilization that was forthright about their intent.